everybody. My name is Khanyisa. That's how you say my name. My friends call me Kanye. You can call me Kanye as long as you don't call me Kanye. It sounds very similar. I'm from South Africa and I live in Austin, Texas right now. And I am a relationship and pleasure coach. Now, when people hear that, their first response is to tell me about their relationship issues. I've had strangers tell me their most intimate things about their romantic relationships. But when my clients come to work with me, they soon realize that my work as a relationship coach is to really help them work on the relationship that they have with themselves. I help my clients learn how to operate in romantic relationships from a place of self-love, and even deeper than that, from a place of radical self-love. And I think it says on here, loving yourself to the core. And I kind of really liked that. That's how this banner ended up. Now I have notes, so I'll be doing a little bit of this and talking to you at the same time. What brought me to coaching is my mother was married to my stepfather, and my stepfather was not the nicest of men. He was, I would categorize him as a really terrible man. And they were married for a really long time. They had 4 kids together. And within that time together, my mom endured cheating, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and she kept on staying. And sadly, her story ends with her dying at age 36. She was a baby. And when I started being serious in romantic relationships, I realized that I was mimicking some of her behavior, and I was responding to disrespect, and I was responding to emotional abuse and infidelity in my own relationships the same way that she was. And when I sat with myself and I was thinking, what am I missing here? What did my mom and I not have? And I realized that we had not learned how to love ourselves. And so we were reaching for love from romantic partners because we didn't know what it looked like to give ourselves love in that way. And I sometimes jokingly say that my mom loved her husband more than she loved herself. And sometimes I even feel like more than she loved her kids. But the truth is that she probably did. And I don't know how much of that was, I love him or I don't love myself. So I need to feel that love, however toxic it looks. And so my journey into coaching really started from the point of, how do I teach people, particularly women, to enter relationships not out of the need of being loved, but have that be something they cultivate within themselves. And this journey has really led me into thinking about the how. What is the how of cultivating radical self-love? When I say radical self-love, people think about the word radical. What does it mean to radically love yourself? A lot of the times we confuse love with self-care. We confuse self-love with going out and going to the spa and doing your nails and all of this. And I love that. I love getting my nails done too. I love a good mani-pedi. But for me, radical self-love is the ability to look at yourself, but also the stuff that you don't want to see, your triggers, your traumas, your lack of self-awareness, your emotional response to things, and thinking about, how can I love myself here? It is so easy for us to love other people. If I asked you now, do you love your partner? You would say yes. Do you love your kids? You would say yes. And I would follow that up with, how do you know that you love them? And your answer would be, because of the things that I do for them. And I usually define love as action. It's a verb. It's an action word. It is, I love you, so I am going to do this for you to prove to you that I love you. And the work that I do with my clients is, how can you turn that around and say, I love myself. And because I love myself, this is how I am going to navigate this most important relationship that I have in my life, which is with myself. The first thing that my clients really lean into, and I've learned to lean into myself, is in what areas in my life am I not self-loving? And for me, that was the foundation of, there are so many things that I do that show that I do not love myself, from setting boundaries to accepting disrespect in relationships, to chronic people pleasing, to chronic positivity, to lack of self-awareness, lack of being intentional in how I heal myself, in how I take care of myself, right down to how I eat, right down to why I go to the gym and work out. Those are all the things that I had to really see how unloving I was. But the big thing, the really, really big thing to me, was my negative self-talk. We talk to ourselves in ways that we would not talk to a friend. We are so hard on ourselves. We internally have a very self-destructive dialogue. And when we look at how we engage with ourselves in that way, how negative we are, how we yell at ourselves intentionally, the words that we call ourselves, our inability to allow ourselves to make mistakes and just see that as human error. When a friend makes a mistake, we go, no, babe, that was just a mistake. But when we make a mistake, we call ourselves stupid, we call ourselves dumb. And I had to learn not to do that anymore. And so this short little talk, I'm going to just focus on three things. I'm going to focus on healing. I'm going to focus on setting boundaries. And I'm going to focus on how you can develop self-compassion and how self-compassion ties into self-love. The very first thing that we need to learn as we take on the journey of self-love is learning how to set loving boundaries. I know you probably have heard it everywhere. Everybody talks about boundaries. Every life coach you follow talks about boundaries, and it's because they are that important. When you don't teach people in your life how to engage with you, you are setting yourself up for a lot of frustration. You're setting yourself up for a lot of failure. And what I realize, even when I work with my clients, is when we talk about boundaries, they see that as something that communicates to people that I don't want to be with you anymore. But I have found that I only set boundaries with people that I want to continue a relationship with. I only set boundaries with people that I want to continue a relationship with. And for me, boundaries have been, I am going to put this in place for myself first. It's been realizing that setting boundaries has nothing to do with other people. If somebody is a smoker, I don't want them to quit smoking. I want that to be something they do for themselves. But for me, as somebody who doesn't smoke and I want to be clean and protect my body, I'm going to ask you not to smoke around me. So that boundary is about me and not controlling what other people do. And I have found also that a lot of people struggle to set boundaries in romantic relationships. How do you tell your partner that there are ways that you are not comfortable with in how you've been engaging? And that process requires a lot of compassion, and it also requires a lot of assertion, being assertive when you're setting your boundaries. I always say that I'm 38 years old. I know I don't look it, but I'm 38 years old. And the people who are in my life, from my family to my friends, and now to my relationship of 5 years, they have been engaging with me in one way. And the truth is, I have allowed them to do that. And so it's not going to take one time of setting a boundary and then they will just fall in line and they will stay in my life and they will keep going because I've said so. When you set boundaries, you have to realize that there will be pushback because people are used to dealing with you in a certain way. And now you are coming in and you are changing those rules of engagement. And compassion says, I am compassionate to the fact that this is going to take time for you. It happened to me when I came out to my family as a queer woman, and my family was like, wait, what do you mean? These are the plans we had, and this is the future we'd imagined for you. And what I had to exercise is compassion and saying they've had all of these plans. I was going to be like this and I was going to be like that. And now I'm telling them that actually I am going to be different. But just because they reacted in that way didn't mean I had to change who I was. And it is the same with your boundaries. Just because people are pushing back doesn't mean that you don't get to be assertive with them. It means that you get to have compassion and say, I understand why this is pushback for you. I understand that there's also a part of you that knows that I am changing. And through this change, the things that you used to get from me, the stuff that you used to benefit from, you are not going to be benefiting from that anymore, because I am now learning how to choose myself. And the second thing that I really think is really important when we talk about loving ourselves to the core is investigating within ourselves, what are the things that we need to heal? I have found that my own healing has been so intentional when I have done it out of the need to love myself. When I look at myself and say, Khanyisa, because you love yourself, you need to know how to heal yourself. We've all gone through trauma. We've all gone through something big, something small. We've all gone through something that changes how we navigate life. We've all gone through something that makes our nervous system act a certain way. And for me, healing has looked less like, oh, I need to heal because everybody's healing. I need to go to therapy because everybody goes to therapy. And it became, I have to go to therapy because I love myself. And I know that the life that I want, the stuff that I want to create for myself, the experiences that I want to have cannot happen until I heal myself. And that healing looks different from everybody. For me, it's therapy. For you, it could be a life coach. For someone else, it could be traveling the world, which I'm like, oh, can it be all of those, right? But when you are not intentional and aware of the stuff that you've been through, you are always going to operate from that space. We see, experience, navigate life from our trauma age. My trauma age was 9 years old. I watched my grandfather die. My grandfather was my best friend, and he went, it was the first time South Africans were voting in Black South Africans were voting in South Africa. He woke up and he went to vote for Nelson Mandela. He came home and he died in his garden, and I was there watching. And so he was the first person I came home to. And for a really long time, I had a very deep, deep, deep abandonment wound. And I was operating in all my relationships from that abandonment wound. And what that led me to is having an anxious attachment style. If you've not heard about attachment styles, I would encourage you to do research on what they are, particularly how they affect how you navigate romantic relationships. I realized that in a lot of my relationships, I was holding on out of anxiety, out of the fear of being left, out of the fear of being abandoned, out of the fear of being rejected. And when I started to see how that trauma has created a codependency issue, I had to think there has to be a healthier way for me to be in relationships. And I'll tie it one more time too. And because I love myself, I had to find a way to love myself enough to go seek healing, to read books, to go to the gym, to regulate my nervous system, to find things that bring me joy outside of a relationship. And I'm on that journey right now. And so I want you to think about, how can I intentionally heal? And if you're like, things have been good for me, I don't need to heal nothing, then I'm so happy for you. Yeah, you, right? But as we're growing and we're learning that even the healthiest of romantic relationships work friendships, they work well when we love ourselves first. And a lot of the times we equate self-love with being selfish. We're so scared of being called selfish. We're so scared of being called all these negative things that people call us when we start paying attention to ourselves. But healthy relationships begin from a point and that foundation of loving yourself first and loving yourself to the core. And the last thing that I want to touch on is, how do you use self-compassion? And how do you take self-compassion and tie it in with self-love? Self-compassion is not self-pity. A lot of the times people are like, oh, like, do you mean feel sorry for myself? No, I mean recognize that you are a work in progress. Recognize that perfection is not something that you need to be seeking. Recognize that this life is a journey. There's no destination. We are all going through something. And how I teach my clients to exercise self-compassion is to first think about how they speak to themselves. How do I talk to myself when I've made a mistake? How do I talk to myself when I feel tired? How do I talk to myself when I feel like I'm unproductive and I haven't done the things that I said I was going to do? What is that internal dialogue? What is that conversation that I have with myself? And begin to change that. If it's negative, change that stuff and make it a positive thing that's going on here, the mind. If we can control and master how we view ourselves and master how we think about ourselves, we can start to show ourselves compassion. When I make a mistake now, I've learned to say, it's okay. It's okay that you made a mistake today. It happens. Tomorrow will be different. If I feel I've had a day where I wasn't productive, it's okay that you were not productive. Tomorrow is another day. Instead of spewing self-loathing stuff to myself, I begin to speak with myself with a lot of tenderness and with a lot of care, because those are things that I can give to myself. And I want to end it with, a lot of the times we look at love as something that we need to outsource. We look at love and compassion and grace and tenderness as things that we need to wait to be given to us. We want our families to give us love. We want our partners to give us love and joy and happiness. We want our friends to give us this stuff. But I want you to recognize as you continue with your day today, that these are things that you can completely give to yourself, that you have an infinite reservoir of self-love and grace and self-compassion. And this is where I'm going to end with you today. Thank you so much for staying with me.